Welcome back to Andersen Acres. We're here today to talk about another problem that can occur with mini horses, another health problem specifically. So over the last few weeks, we have been talking about different problems that can crop up with your mini horses, but this one is something they're born with. And this one is incredibly serious, and you should not go to an auction and purchase a mini horse with this condition. You also shouldn't sell a mini horse with this condition. Now, you can rescue one if you are equipped to look after it, or you can let a rescue or a rehabber take care of your little one that has this particular condition, but they are not ethically bred. I am talking about dwarfism. Dwarfism in mini horses is a really serious issue. Luckily, it's not super common, but there are unscrupulous breeders out there who breed them for their size because they're adorable. But they are packed with health problems. It's not good for the baby. It's not good for you as someone who's going to have to spend thousands of dollars in medical care. So let's talk about dwarfism, what it is, and how you can look after a mini horse that does have this condition if you end up in a position where you have to look after one. Generally, people who do not have the expertise in looking after horses shouldn't try to look after a mini horse that has the dwarfism genes. You just shouldn't try. So if you end up, maybe your mare has a little one that is definitely a dwarf, you're going to want to get some help looking after that one, and then you might want to consider rehoming it to somebody who does know what they're doing, because they're complicated. So let's talk about it. So mini horses were originally bred exclusively for their size. This is fine because we love how small and cute they are. They're absolutely adorable. We absolutely adore our Shadowfax. However, when you focus on just one trait, and this is true no matter which animal you breed, when you focus on just one trait, whether it's size or whether it's color or whether it's whatever, pick a trait that you like. If you only focus on that one trait, you end up ignoring all others, and then you end up with undesirable and unexpected outcomes. They might have been expected by other people, but you might not have seen it coming. Dwarves were used to reduce the size originally. So back when mini horses were first cropping up, mini horses, especially stallions that had the dwarfism gene, were bred back into the mini horse population to keep everybody small. Okay? Get everyone even smaller. And that is sort of fine, except dwarfism is a problem in mini horses. So even though a lot of breeders have made a concerted effort in the last couple decades to get this dwarfism gene out of miniature horses, it can still pop up, even after years and even decades of careful breeding. So there are bad breeders who will deliberately breed miniature horses with the dwarfism gene to another miniature horse with that dwarfism gene, and then they'll try to sell the babies because they're really small. That's like the telltale sign that it's a dwarf. Shadowfax is small for a mini. Okay, he's only 28 inches at the shoulders. So he's small for a mini. He's not a dwarf. Okay, if he was like 22 inches, 20 inches, 18 inches at the shoulder, that would be concerning. That's too small for a mini, and it's definitely a dwarf. If you have an adult that is that big, that's not good. Okay, so breeders will sell these guys though for a ton of money. Sometimes they'll crop up at an auction, and you will see them go for sometimes thousands because they're small and cute. Okay, they're absolutely adorable, but doing this is a bit ridiculous. So breeders shouldn't be doing that. These guys should not be deliberately bred. Sometimes recessive genes crop up, we all know that, but you shouldn't deliberately breed for dwarfism, because these are not healthy or desirable. But people who don't know any better just see this cute, adorable little mini horse. They don't know that they are going to end up spending thousands of dollars on care for the joints and the breathing and all the things that can crop up with these guys. So if you don't know, then you might end up buying one of these guys, and it can be thousands of dollars out of your pocket. They might be tiny, but they have a lot of health problems that require a lifetime of care. So if you are new to horses at all, don't take one on. Not even as a rescue. If you don't know what you're doing yet because you're new to horses or mini horses, pass. Get somebody else to look after it. Don't take it in as a rescue. Don't try to rehab it. It's not going to work because you don't actually know what you're doing with a regular horse yet. So learn about looking after a regular mini before you decide whether or not you should take in a dwarf. That is so important because these guys have really bad joint problems. They have a really short life expectancy. They are going to cost you a lot of money in dental care. They're going to have organ problems. This is just not going to be fun. So, signs of dwarfism. This is important. How do you know if a baby, especially because it's not full grown yet, so you can't see how big it is going to be a dwarf or is a dwarf? So first of all, they are smaller than they should be. Even as a newborn, okay, even as a foal, they are still a lot smaller than they should be. So that's a telltale sign. They also have shortened limbs. So if you look at the pictures that are playing, they've got really short legs, okay? Much shorter than Shadowfax does. So Shadowfax looks like you took a large horse, put him in the dryer, and he accidentally shrunk, okay? That's what he looks like, because he looks like a standard horse, just little. So that's what a mini horse should look like. They shouldn't be ill-proportioned. Dwarves have shortened legs, and this is a problem. The nostrils, if you look at some of the pictures that are playing, you will notice that in some of them, those nostrils, a horse is usually having a nice elongated face. So, you know, forehead, nose down here. In a dwarf, the nostrils are going to be a little too high, or maybe a lot too high. So you're going to, instead of seeing the nostrils here, you'll see the nostrils here. So that's not a good thing either because it impacts their breathing. You want to look for what's called angular limb deformation. It's just the legs pointing in the wrong way. Okay, so if the legs are not straight enough, okay, so if they're turned weird and they have short legs, it's a sign of dwarfism. Okay, the level of angular limb deformation can vary from relatively minor, and if you don't know what to look for, it can almost slip by you. But it can also be incredibly severe to the point where the pony is having difficulty walking and they have to have their legs splinted, and it's not fun for them. They also have an underbite. A lot of times, not all of them, depends on the genes, but a lot of times they have that underbite, which makes it difficult for them to chew their food because their teeth don't meet, and then they need their teeth floated a lot because remember, a horse's teeth keep growing. So you end up with a lot of money going into dental care. So that can be a problem. They also have a pot belly. If you look at a lot of these pictures, they look like pot-belly pigs in horse form. Okay, because they got that pot belly. Okay, why is that a problem? It's cute. Right, but the problem is a lot of times these dwarves are born with organs that are the same size as a regular mini horse. And if the organs are the same size, but they're in a body that's so much smaller, the organs are getting squished. That's why you have that rotund belly. That is way more rotund than it should be. Even a fat mini horse is not that big around the belly. So that is another telltale sign. So there are 4 different types of dwarfism, as far as we are aware. We might identify other dwarf genes as we continue to study this, but right now we have identified 4 different dwarf genes. One of them, and they're all recessive, by the way. In order for the dwarf genes to pop up, you have to have 2, meaning you have to inherit one from mama, one from papa. If you only inherit one, you're not a dwarf. You're a carrier of the gene, but you're not a dwarf yourself. So you can only end up a dwarf if you have 2 copies. Okay, it's like any other recessive gene. You need 2 copies, one from mom, one from dad. There are 4 types of dwarfism that we've identified. One of them results in an abortion of the fetus about midterm. The baby just dies, and you will not have to care for anything because it was never viable in the first place. One type of dwarfism is fatal to the foal before that foal is even born. So, unfortunately. The other three are, again, all recessive, and they result in a different combination of problems. That's why you see mini horses that are dwarves that don't have identical problems. Okay, they're not all carbon copies of each other. Some have deformed heads, some have deformed bellies, some have legs that just stick out like crazy. It's very different in each mini horse, and it's because you've got 3 different genes working on you. So if you have the first gene, you have certain symptoms. If you have the second gene, but regardless, all of them are smaller than they should be and are just chock full of medical problems. There is a genetic test now where you can test your mini horse to see if they are a carrier. Obviously, if you are a dwarf, you look like a dwarf. But you can test your mini horse if you're intending to breed them to see if they're a dwarf. Okay, if they carry that recessive dwarf gene. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't breed them. I wouldn't, personally, if I had a mare that carried the dwarf gene, I just simply wouldn't breed her. I would get another mare that was negative. But it is not impossible to breed her. You would have to breed her to a stallion that was entirely negative. And the only way you can know that is by the genetic testing. The testing is still fairly new and not everywhere offers it. So your best bet is to get in touch with a veterinary college and ask them, because if they don't do it, they'll be able to kind of point you in the right direction. And the result you want is basically NN. You're negative on both sides because you carry 2 copies. You pass 1 copy down each time you have a baby. So when you have 2 copies of something, you want to know they're both negative. So what you're looking for is an N and an N. Okay? That's what you want, ideally, as one of each. Like, you don't want any dwarf genes, so you want 2 N's. There'll be a slash separating them, so you have N/N. And that's what you're looking for when you get your genetic test back. You very much want that. So what kind of health problems do these little guys have? Well, not good ones. They have, like, painful arthritic limbs and joints. They get a lot of swelling in those joints. There's a lot of pressure. They do not walk well. Okay, it's very difficult. They can be in a lot of pain. They can have a lot of breathing issues because of that head shape and the nostrils not being in the right place. And sometimes they'll have a kind of domed forehead. And that domed forehead makes it difficult for them to breathe as well. So all of these things come together and you can have a horse that just can't breathe and you might end up euthanizing, which is not fun. You'll end up with squished organs, like I mentioned before, that pot belly. Well, the organs are getting squished. And when those organs are squished, you can have multiple complications, systemic problems that just kind of compound and just make your life miserable and make the pony miserable. And it's not good for anybody. You're going to have persistent teeth and dental problems, especially if you get that underbite. It's going to be their entire lives. You're going to have their teeth floated constantly. And one of the problems is if a dwarf gets pregnant, so a dwarf mare, so a mini horse dwarf mare gets pregnant, one of the problems you're going to have is the foals for sure are going to be dwarves. Okay, it's going to happen. But the pregnancy can be incredibly complicated and dangerous. And there's a real good chance you're going to lose her and the foal. So it is really important that you do not breed a dwarf. Okay, it is not safe. It is not safe for her. It's not safe for the baby. So don't do that. Don't breed them. So what do you do if a dwarf is born to you? Okay, so you are breeding mini horses and you had no idea these dwarven genes were in your herd. And now you have this little dwarf baby. What do you do with it? Well, you're going to have some tough decisions to make. The first thing you should do is not repeat that breeding. Because now you know that mom and dad both have that recessive gene. Do not breed those 2 again. All right? Whether you choose to breed them or not at all is a different story, but do not breed them to each other again. Because again, you have 25% chance of that foal being a dwarf. So, but you've already got that baby. Now what do you do? Well, there's a chance that that baby is going to pass away in the first few days. And even if it lives past the first few days, there's a good chance it'll pass away in the following weeks and months. However, you want to get a vet out as soon as possible. Get a vet out, take a look at the baby. You're going to have some tough decisions to make because if they can't breathe, if they can't walk, it is kinder to humanely euthanize them. You're going to need your vet to come out and take a look, and you guys can make an informed decision yourselves because you have to look at the foal in front of you and judge on an individual basis. So you want to make sure that the vet has evaluated and understands the nature of dwarf mini horses. If they don't, you guys need to sit down and have a conversation about finding a vet that has that information because not all vets are well versed in dwarven mini horses. And that's unfortunate, but it happens. So you should find a vet who can deal with it if that crops up in your herd. But you may want to put the baby down if it's severely deformed, if it's having difficulty breathing and can't walk. That's not fair. If it's in a lot of pain, I would euthanize. But outside of that, it's a judgment call. So if he can get around relatively well and he doesn't seem like he's in pain, you might just want to let him live out his life. He can just be a happy little tiny guy that runs around on your farm. It is really important that you don't sell him, okay? Because people want to sell these guys for thousands of dollars. And if you are going to let him go to a rescue or a rehabber, you need to vet that rescue or rehabber. Make sure they're not someone in disguise, basically. I'm not saying actual disguise, but someone pretending to be someone they're not, who intends to resell that little guy behind your back. The auction is no place for these little guys. They need specialized care. They're going to need help throughout their entire lives. And you 100% do not want to end up in a position where somebody unscrupulous ends up with one of your foals. So just make sure you know where that mini horse is going if you choose not to care for them. If you are letting that mini horse go to a rescue or a rehabber, you need to do full disclosure. You need to talk to them about the nature of dwarfism. You need to let your vet have a conversation with the rescue or rehabber so that everybody is on the same page, so that everybody understands that this guy's going to need specialized care. There's nothing worse than thinking you found a wonderful little place for this pony to grow up, only for 2 weeks later for them to call you and say, this isn't going to work. I didn't know that he was going to be this sick. Well, they are. They need specialized care. So some of them live long, fairly happy lives, but they all have medical problems. So remember that if you're going to take one on as a rescue, it's just a complicated issue and you're going to need the support of your vet, of a very good vet and a very good farrier, because you're probably going to have a whack ton of problems. So if you do take in a dwarf mini horse, just know that it's a long road. So hopefully that helps you out if that is something you're interested in or something that has come up in your own life. I hope it hasn't. These little guys don't deserve that. Remember, do not buy these guys at auction. People are going to want to pay thousands of dollars for these little guys. It's not ethical. These guys are in a lot of pain a lot of the time. They're not well. They do not deserve that kind of life. So if you do end up with one in your care, don't take them to auction. Either keep them yourself or find them a wonderful home. That's about it for us here today at Andersen Acres. We'll see you tomorrow.